My name is Corey Mesa, and you're watching Mesa Makes. Hi guys, so today on Mesa Makes, we're going to be making a set of shelves. My wife wants these shelves to hang some pictures on. We're gonna have 3 tiers. We're gonna start with how to make them, then I'm gonna show you how to stain them, and then I'm gonna show you how to install them.
So for starters, we gotta get everything cut down to length. What I'm using here is 3 1x6s, 3 1x3s, and 3 1x2s, all cut to 48 inches in length. Once it's all laid out, go ahead and cut everything to length. The reason I chose 4 feet was because our front lip pieces that we're using came in 4-foot lengths and they fit perfectly in our little alcove area. After everything's cut, go ahead and sand down all your pieces. The reason we're doing this is because some of these spots are not going to actually be able to get sanded down once we stain them and glue them. So we're going to give everything a sanding like we were just going to finish the project right here, and we'll go ahead and give it another sanding later on after we assemble it. Couple things to note when sanding: make sure you have something holding it down the wood, or you clamp it down if you're by yourself. I showed this here. Couple other things to do is make sure when you're sanding, you actually go full strokes the whole length of the wood to make sure you don't leave any pits or any mars from staying in one spot too long. After you finish sanding your pieces, go ahead and make sure to wipe them down with a damp rag followed by a dry rag. What that's going to do is pull off any extra sawdust before you go to attach glue to it and assemble the thing. Once you're done with that, we're ready to assemble. Now you're going to take your 1x6 and glue on your 1x3, and then take your 1x2 and glue that to your 1x3 in the shape shown on the right. There's a couple different ways you can do this. The way that we're showing here, we glued the pieces together, clamped them together, and then went along with our brad nailer and attached them all together, trying to keep all 3 pieces together at the same time. It can be a little clunky, but if this is what you have, this is what you have. While these are clamped together, go ahead and make sure you can wipe away all your excess glue. It'll make it easier on you later when you have to sand. If you have more clamps, a better way to do this would be to clamp it to the table and then brad nail the 2 pieces, and then take that new piece and clamp on your last little lip. There's no real wrong way to do this project. As long as you're being safe and the final product looks the way you want it to, you're going to do just fine. The biggest thing to remember is just do what you can do in your own shop. Once the glue is fully dried, go ahead and hit it again with a sanding just to kind of clean everything up, get rid of that excess glue, and get it ready to take the stain. You are going to want to wipe these down with a damp rag, again followed by a dry rag, just to make sure you get all that sawdust out of the way and all that excess glue so you can have the stain actually stick where you want it to. Alright, now here comes the fun part. This is where you're going to get your work shirt challenge done. Go ahead and start staining. I like to do a real dark stain, real heavy coats, and then I wipe it off really quick, let it soak in. That usually gives us about the color we want. If you're looking for a darker stain, obviously do more coats. Biggest thing to note is that we are outside in a very, very well ventilated area. Do not do this in your garage with all the doors closed, because you're going to not feel very well. While those are drying, go ahead and mark out your stud locations. Usually studs are 16 inches on center, meaning that they're 16 inches apart from each other, center to center, but don't always count on that. I've been in some houses where studs are 18 inches, 14 inches. It kind of just all depends on what the person who installed them put them at. So what we're doing here is laying out where the shelves are actually going to go, so we can make some jigs like you see in the top right corner, so we know exact spacing without having to pull in a tape measure up every time. Everybody's heard the saying, measure twice, cut once, but I'm a firm believer that if you measure right the first time, you can make measurement blocks that will measure for you to where you can just think about building the project instead of thinking of how many little lines over 3/8 of an inch is on the tape measure. Here is a measurement jig that I made for the whole location. If you're gonna use the same measurement over and over, it's better to make a jig instead of pulling out the tape measure every time. We put this first shelf 3 feet off the ground, anchored one screw in on the studs, made sure it was still level, and then anchored in the other 3 remaining screws. We knew exactly where to put this shelf because of that measurement block. We put the block up against the wall, we put the shelf up against the block, and we anchored it in place. Here you can see my wife and my cousin using more measurement blocks for the height of the shelf because we want the distance to be the same for all 3 shelves. If you do need to use a ladder, be sure to be careful. Never use that top step, and make sure someone's there to watch, and that you always use 3 points of contact.
All in all, it's a pretty easy project. Make sure that you take into account when you're buying the wood for whatever space you're doing it. Don't copy it exactly like we did unless your space calls for it. You want to make sure that you can fit your shelves exactly how you want. This is kind of just a guide to let you know how to do the process, and you can make it however long, however short. You can do 10 of them high for all I care. Whatever you want to do, just make sure you make it match your space. That being said, the reason we picked the wood that we did was because it was very easy to make 4-foot shelves if I started with a 4-foot board for that lip, and I just based all my other wood off of that 4-foot piece of trim on the front. Pretty easy project, literally just glue and nails. You don't have to buy a brad nailer like I have. You can use just regular old, just normal nails. And a hammer, but other than that, it's a pretty easy project. The biggest part is to make sure that you wait until that glue has dried completely and wait until your stain has dried completely before you start hanging them up on the walls. If you put dark stained wood on a white wall or a lighter colored wall, you're not going to be very happy because you're going to leave some marks because that stain hasn't fully dried yet. So just keep that in mind when you're making these projects. Other than that, kind of do what you're doing. I want to see that you guys are making stuff. Remember, we are still doing the #workshirt challenge. I want to see what you are doing with your quarantine and seeing that you're making the most of it, okay? So that's going to do it for us here today at Mesa Makes. Remember, it's not about having time, it's about quarantine. Thanks.